Need your daily fix on mixed martial arts?
We're going to kind of recap Bellator 155.
From UFC 198.
Who's who?
Kind of a controversial decision.
And who's not?
I couldn't figure out why, and then it hit me.
Well, don't you fret, because Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your daily dose of MMA podcast. Everything from the UFC, Bellator Fighting Championship, Extreme Cage Fighting, Invicta Fighting Championships, and so much more. Join us as we talk about some of the biggest names in mixed martial arts. We've got you covered here on Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Arnel, and hopefully you're doing well for yourself. You, your friends, your family, whether you live in the States or internationally, you're doing fine for yourself during a major time of uncertainty. As of right now, during this very complicated time, the only thing we can do right now is look forward and be optimistic. And one thing that I'm pretty optimistic and positive about is the fact that sports is making a comeback, specifically in the Las Vegas area. To those of you who are unaware, combat sports has been considered officially legal and deemed an essential business from the Nevada State Athletic Commission. So combat sports, which includes boxing and mixed martial arts. And last Saturday was a major mixed martial arts event, which was UFC Fight Night, Tyron Woodley versus Gilbert Burns. Now, going through this card here, I'm going to talk about each fight here, but I want to focus in on to the main event. Gilbert Burns had the best performance of his entire career against Tyron Woodley. Now, coming to this fight, a lot of people were predicting Tyron Woodley to go defeat Gilbert Burns, and I'm in the same boat as well. I really did thought Tyron Woodley would go defeat Gilbert Burns off the basis that me, Dana White, analysts, fight fans, we are all in agreement that Tyron Woodley, when he is motivated, is one of, if not the best fighter in the UFC. Dana White always goes on about how this guy looks like a Greek god. He's in great shape. He has all the skills, all the abilities, all the tools. He's got amazing boxing. He's got one punch knockout power. His grappling ability is second to none. To be honest with you, Tyron Woodley pretty much is a perfect fighter. The only thing holding back Tyron Woodley would be his motivational drive to become the best. And with Tyron Woodley, he's got other aspects in his life other than mixed martial arts. For a lot of these fighters, mixed martial arts is their world. And considering that in today's era of mixed martial arts fighters, there's multiple aspects to the game now. There's like the political aspect when it comes to like interacting with the right people in order to prep yourself up and set yourself up into being a popular fighter and becoming, a champion, i.e. Conor McGregor. And then we got fighters here like Tyron Woodley, Colby Covington, Ben Askren, Chael Sonnen. You got fighters who are very focused on their own branding. Tyron Woodley in the UFC Countdown, and UFC previews coming up into this event, Tyron Woodley is always talking about the Tyron Woodley brand, and that he is no longer focused. He's not as focused about the Tyron Woodley brand compared to the fights against Gilbert Burns. And if you look at Woodley's recent fights, even the Darren Till fight, when he fought against Kamaru Usman, Darren Till, Wonderboy Stephen Thompson, he transitioned from being, the hungry champion, the chosen one, the hungry contender, trying to be champion, who wants to prove that he is the best, that he is the greatest. And now Tyron Woodley has devolved himself into this fighter who really cares about his own image and being protected. Because he's gone on from just being a fighter to a guy who is also a musician, someone who aspires to be an actor, TV show actor, movie actor. He currently works at TMZ as a reporter. Now knowing that, and considering the fact that UFC fighters don't make that much money, why would Tyron Woodley be so devoted and focused into being the best in something that's not going to pay him all that well? It's not just Tyron Woodley. Even John Jones right now is talking about how it is difficult for him to, his potential to make a lot of money just isn't there in the UFC. For John Jones, it's in light heavyweight division. For a lot of fighters, it's just like, that's why there's a lot of people talking about like boxing versus UFC, and that boxing pays a lot more than mixed martial arts. So why would you ever want to be good at mixed martial arts if the amount of money and the amount of training that's being involved into mixed martial arts, which is much more complicated, is a lot less in terms of economics than, being a boxer. Now that's out of the way here. Tyron Woodley, I felt like if Tyron Woodley was motivated and his priorities were straight, and he didn't fight like the very passive fighter, the very passive boxer who just doesn't utilize any of his wrestling game, I feel like Tyron Woodley should defeat Gilbert Burns. Like, the best version of Gilbert Burns will lose to the best version of Tyron Woodley. But now things have changed, because this isn't more of Tyron Woodley wasn't motivated to go defeat Gilbert Burns, though I felt like Tyron Woodley gave up by the end of the second round. I said Gilbert Burns fought an amazing fight. There was not a single aspect, not a single shred of Gilbert Burns' game that would be like, you know what? Gilbert Burns, he has to work on this. He has to work on this aspect of his fight game if he wants to defeat blank. I feel like Gilbert Burns, he's really good at this, but really bad at that. Like, he's kind of an A-B fighter, but not a C fighter. That has gone off the window now. At this point, Gilbert Burns is the complete fighter. He really is. You want to go box him? He will box you. You think he'll go for a KO? Yes, he will go and knock you out. He's gonna fight. He's gonna fight tactically with trying to find weird angles. Yes, he's gonna go for weird leg kicks. He'll go for clinches. He'll go for weird, awkward, strange looking angling uppercuts. He will do that. He'll be a barn burning fighter. Dive in there, willing to risk and take the chance to go and fight Woodley. It's just Gilbert Burns. He's a warrior, man. He really is. If you look at Gilbert Burns, he was consistent throughout, always putting. The only knock on Gilbert Burns was the fact that he fought a wee bit recklessly, in the sense that by the 5th round, it's obvious, Gilbert Burns wins the fight. But Gilbert Burns is like, you know what, no, I'm not going to fight very passive, I'm still going to go push forward, and I'm still going to press up onto Tyron Woodley. And consider the fact that Tyron Woodley is one of the hardest hitters of all the UFC, Gilbert Burns took a risk, and I can respect him for doing that. Because while Gilbert Burns took the risk, and pressing himself forward, willing to take the shots from Tyron Woodley in order for himself to go find a better shot, Tyron Woodley did not do so. He didn't do so. There are a lot of instances in the fight here where Gilbert Burns would pressure up Woodley, and if I was Woodley's corner, I would tell Tyron Woodley to go press forward also as well and pressure Gilbert Burns, because the fight here was Gilbert Burns was chasing after Tyron Woodley the entire time. Woodley was trying to circle around the octagon in order to get more spacing between him and Burns, but it just didn't work out. Daniel Cormier and Michael Bisping were talking about it in commentary, that they were like, why is Tyron Woodley always moving backwards? I remember there was a clinch that happened, the referee was able to break it up, and then after being broken up, Burns pressed forward, and Daniel Cormier and Bisping were talking about, why is Tyron Woodley letting Burns press forward on him? He shouldn't be doing that. He shouldn't be doing that. Throughout all 5 rounds, it was always Gilbert Burns pressing the action, moving towards, and it would be one thing if Tyron Woodley is able to go get his counter strikes in, because a Tyron Woodley counter strike right hook will definitely knock anyone out. But it wasn't working out that well, was it? Tyron Woodley wasn't. Gilbert Burns was able to get twice. He was able to get twice as much significant and volume strikes compared to Woodley. And I just don't understand what the cornerman for Tyron Woodley was thinking. I just don't understand it. Why didn't anyone from Woodley's corner told Woodley, hey, press forward, okay? Just press forward. I know, it's gonna suck getting hurt. It's gonna suck getting hits. But guess what? Do you want to win the fight? If you don't want to win the fight, give up. Just give up right now. Just give up. But if you do want to win the fight, you have to press the action. Stop letting Gilbert Burns dictate the pace of the fight. But it didn't happen. Instead, what did happen, it was Burns pressing for the fight. There was never an instance in this 5-round fight to which Tyron Woodley ever controlled the pace of the fight. It never did. Burns defeated Woodley in the wrestling category, in the kickboxing category, in the boxing, in the clinching, in the counter-striking. Burns outfought Tyron Woodley in every facet of the fight game. And because of that, I gotta commend Burns, really. Like, this fight made Gilbert Burns. And in the post-fight interview, he went on to say that he is fine fighting again in July. So, what's going to happen with Gilbert Burns? Are we going to see Gilbert Burns versus Colby Covington? Are we going to see Gilbert Burns versus Kamaru Usman? Jorge Masvidal? As of right now, the welterweight division, it is a stacked division. But there's a lot of drama happening in the division. Dana White in the post-fight press conference was talking about it with the media members, where the media was asking him, "Hey, what's going on with the welterweight division? Although it's really talented, a lot of good fighters here who can all make an argument as to why they should be champion. But as of right now, things are kind of complicated. Kamaru Usman wants Jorge Masvidal. Jorge Masvidal doesn't want Usman because he feels like he has his own belt to defend. Nate Diaz is unavailable. Nick Diaz is unavailable. Tyron Woodley, I don't know what's next for Tyron Woodley after this fight. I really don't know. Because there's no way I can see him back in the top 5 rankings. Gilbert Burns, he's ready to go, but he doesn't know who he wants to fight next. Colby Covington, I don't know when he's ready. So right now the welterweight division now is up in the air, and we don't know what to expect, but congratulations, Gilbert Burns. You're listening to the GSMC MMA Podcast, coming back after the short break.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
And welcome back. So, I'm talking about UFC Fight Night, Woodley versus Burns. It was a great, enjoyable fight between Gilbert Burns and Tyron Woodley, without a doubt about it. It was the best performance of Gilbert Burns' career. I can expect Gilbert Burns fighting someone like Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman, Jorge Masvidal. I can expect a lot from Gilbert Burns. I don't think... Here's the thing. If Gilbert Burns can somehow get himself a title shot by the end of this year, this would be the year of Burns. Like, last year was the year of Jorge Masvidal. This year would be the year of Gilbert Burns. Because, let's look at this. Gilbert Burns 2 months ago fought against Damian Maia. He fought against one of the all-time greats in Jiu-Jitsu. And then he defeated a former welterweight champion, one of the best welterweight champions of all time in Tyron Woodley. And if he gets a fight against Kamaru Usman, he had 3 major fights all in 1 year. Nobody was talking about Gilbert Burns last year, but now we are. So it was a great star-setting performance for Gilbert Burns. I don't know what comes next for Tyron Woodley. There's always been questions about Tyron Woodley's motivation to become a fighter. And right now, I don't see Tyron Woodley participating or being part of the top 5 of the welterweight division. I just don't see it. And so let's talk about the rest of the main card here. We got here Blagoy Ivanov versus Augusto Sakai, Billy Quarantillo versus Pat Carlisle, Roosevelt Roberts versus Brock Weaver, and Mackenzie Dern versus Hannah Cyphers. I'm going to be talking about each of these fights here. So let's start with the co-main event here. Blagoy Ivanov versus Augusto Sakai. And so this fight here between Sakai versus Ivanov, to be honest with you, I was not all that well interested into this fight here, off the basis of the fact that Blagoy Ivanov, by the beginning of the second round, started to look gassed. He started to look really gassed, and then it became a battle between 2 frail whales here. Augusto Sakai was able to defeat Ivanov off the basis that Ivanov, not really Ivanov, but Sakai was a lot more consistent with the striking. It really was. Because it was really obvious what was going to happen with Blagoy Ivanov here. Blagoy was headhunting throughout the entire first round, and he just kept throwing everything in the first round here, and missing. Augusto Sakai just had better movement. One strange aspect to this game was that Ivanov was chasing Sakai for the majority of his fights, but Sakai was always backpedaling, and he was hitting, unlike Tyron Woodley, Sakai was able to get his counter shots, his counter strikes in. And consider the fact that Sakai had the longer reach, longer arm reach, longer leg reach, and so he was doing a lot more better in the clinching. Sakai was able to have a more higher volume of shots and strikes that landed compared to Ivanov. Because Ivanov, he'd be throwing these, wild hooks and wild haymakers that would miss. He would go for clinching, but really do it without any grappling or holding on to the back of the person's head. He's not really doing much, really. Ivanov is throwing out bombs that are not connecting, and so if a fighter just misses his shot while another fighter ends up with a leg kick or a body kick, then Sakai wins in those situations then. So, Augusto Sakai was able to win the fight via unanimous decision, and I agree with him. I don't really see, I don't really see how Ivanov could have won this fight, except maybe in the first round. He might have maybe won the first round, but Sakai, a lot more consistent with his striking, and I gotta respect him for that. Augusto Sakai is now 15-1, so good for Sakai there as he makes his way up the heavyweight division. I don't know what's gonna be next for Sakai. Maybe OSP. That's my guess here. Wellington Pro lost his last week's bout against Ben Rothwell, and since he's looking for so OSP looks much more better in the heavyweight division than he did in light heavyweight, and I think it'd be a really good fight, a really enjoyable fight, style wise between OSP versus Augusto Sakai. I think that's the next best matchup for both fighters and in both of their careers. And then we got my fight of the night here. My personal fight of the night here, which was Billy Quarantillo versus Spike Carlyle. Here's the thing. So when I was looking at both of these fighters like a couple days ago, they didn't even have pictures. Because if you go on Google and you type up, like the fight card, you're going to see the fighters' names and then you'll see their faces. Them, they don't get a face. You just see Spike Carlyle versus Billy Quarantillo, and it's like an empty blank slate. Like a gray man. Have you ever played a fighting game and you go to random and it's like this gray silhouette? That's what it is. And so what made this fight really fun was that, you know what? Bell rings, referee tells both fighters to go and start fighting. Carlyle sprints across the octagon and goes for a pump kick. He pump kicks Quarantillo. Quarantillo goes down. Carlyle begins to do some ground and pounding, and then pretty much Carlyle just does ground and pounding for the better part of 4.5 minutes. And it wasn't one-sided ground and pounding you see from Khabib Nurmagomedov, where it's like, okay, so if Khabib's on top of you and he's pushing the ground, it's obvious Khabib has you on. Okay, he's got you. For Quarantillo versus Carlyle, no, it really wasn't. It was Carlyle taking him down, and then these two would be constantly doing like rolls and like reverses out of each other. You see them doing fireman's carry. They're just seeing them doing fireman's carries. You see them, both of them transitioning between reversals and submission holds. It was super fun because it was always active. There was not a single 5 seconds of action between Carlyle and Quarantillo that felt boring. Not a single 5 seconds. These guys were always working. There was not a single instance of every 5 seconds that things weren't always happening and these fighters weren't working towards something. And that's why I thought this was fight of the night here. Because in the first round, yeah, Carlyle, he smoked Quarantillo, gets him in ground and pound. Quarantillo is defending himself like a warrior. Second round, it's a little bit more of the same, except that Quarantillo from the bottom position is able to defend himself. Not only is he able to defend himself, is able to get multiple submission attempts onto Carlyle that almost happened. It wasn't a case of, Carlyle was able to successfully defend his submission. It was more like, oh my gosh, how did Carlyle barely get out of the submission hold? That was the scenario here, and that Quarantillo was able to defend himself from the bottom position, and he was able to wear down Carlyle with like raining down elbows from the bottom. He was able to some punches. He was able to. There's multiple times where he was able to reverse out of Carlyle's top guard or half guard, and he was able to get himself into either the back or the half guard, and then Carlyle was able to reverse himself out there, get back to position. A lot of action happened in these 3 rounds here, and then in the third round, Carlyle pretty much threw everything at Quarantillo in the first and second round. And I think Carlyle was convinced that he did enough in the first and second round that he can kind of get away with fighting kind of mediocre report in the third round. And in the third round, Carlyle landed one significant strike. Didn't get a single successful takedown. Quarantillo completely eated up Carlyle, both in the ground game and in stand-up. And it could have gone 8-10. And I could have thought this might have been a tie. But instead, the fight went to decision. So, the judges scored it 29-28, with the winner by unanimous decision, Billy Quarantillo. So, Billy Quarantillo was able to win the fight. Spike Carlyle looked disappointed. He thought he won the fight. I won't be surprised if his cornermen, or there are fans out there who thought Carlyle should have won the fight. But really, it was such a close fight, and I think judges made the right decision here. Yes, Carlyle controlled Quarantillo more in the fight, had more ground control over him, but let's be honest here. For the most part, in the second round, Quarantillo was controlling Carlyle from the bottom. He really was. It didn't feel like Carlyle was on top of him, raining down elbows, raining down punches from top position, and had complete control. No, it felt like Carlyle was able to take down Quarantillo. Quarantillo is able to make the most out of that and was able to strike Carlisle from the bottom, and he did a lot of damage because that was very evident because in the third round, Carlisle was pretty much gassed. So if you say, okay, who won in a round per round basis? Alright, Carlisle, obviously without a doubt, he won the first round. Billy Quarantillo, he won the second round because although he was in the bottom position, he was dictating the pace and he was controlling their fights. Third round, Carlisle was already gassed. He was even more gassed. Quarantillo was able to bring him down with strikes and wrestling. And there are multiple instances where you could say Billy Quarantillo could have tapped out Carlisle, but that didn't happen. It was a fun, super fun, exciting fight, and without doubt, easily the best fight of the entire night. I would love to see both these fighters get back in the octagon again. It was such an exciting way to start the show off also, because the fight before it though was kind of a drag, was kind of boring here, but even the commentator team, Michael Bisping and Danny Cormier, when they saw Carlisle jump up there with a pump kick, like Cormier and Michael Bisping were laughing their butts off. They're like, oh my gosh, whoa, pump kick, immediately, take down, whoa, this is insane. Like even the commentary team were freaking out over how excited and fun this fight was. So I'm going to tell you right now, the two fights you guys need to watch, if you guys haven't seen it yet, it has to be Tyron Woodley versus Gilbert Burns, and you got to see Billy Quarantillo versus Spike Carlisle, one of the best fights of the year in my book. So you're listening to the GSMC MMA Podcast, coming back after the short break here.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And welcome back. So we're discussing UFC Fight Night, Tyron Woodley versus Gilbert Burns. So, Woodley versus Gilbert Burns, that was a fun fight. Blagoy Ivanov versus Sakai, that was kind of a meh fight, but still, it was a good showcase for Sakai. Billy Quarantillo versus Spike Carlisle stole the show, without doubt. My personal favorite fight of the night, one of the best fights of the entire year. And then, as we go down here in the main card, we had Roosevelt Roberts versus Brock Weaver. This fight, to me, in my personal opinion, wasn't all that exciting or enjoyable to watch, really. And that was because there was an obvious disparity between Roosevelt Roberts and his game versus Brock Weaver. And this is not me disrespecting Brock Weaver. It felt like he was a frail whale. In the sense that, so when I say a frail whale, the term frail whale comes with somebody who looks like they're doing work, but they really are not. Somebody who looks like they're doing action, because if I were to tell you right now, Brock Weaver, he comes towards Roosevelt, he's pressing up the action, he's holding him to clinch, he's throwing out knees, he's throwing out uppercuts, he's throwing out right haymakers, man. He's being incredibly aggressive towards Roosevelt. You'd be thinking, oh wow, Brock Weaver, he's dictating the pace of the fight, he's dictating the action, he's really putting himself forward into this fight. Wow, good job for Brock Weaver over here. Alright, now that's what I tell you. But if you actually saw the fight, Brock Weaver was doing all that. He was. Roosevelt Roberts just didn't care for whatever offense Brock Weaver was trying to do, because he was eating everything up here. He really was. In a report that I'm going to go on later in this podcast here, but Roosevelt Roberts, he had no sustaining injuries. No major or even little sustaining injuries from this fight at all. So even though Weaver was the obvious one being aggressive, going aggro, going offensive on towards Roosevelt Roberts, nothing was really happening. It really wasn't then. This is the case of... So remember when I talked about Tyron Woodley and Gilbert Burns? And that Burns was perfectly fine putting himself in a bad situation in order to create a counterpunch opportunity for him? Yeah, that's what happened here. And that Brock Weaver came towards Roosevelt Roberts. Roosevelt Roberts just stood his ground. He took whatever that happened to him, realized that these guys' punches just weren't all that strong or didn't really budge him at all. And then Roosevelt Roberts was able to go take advantage of the clinch. He was able to outpower Brock Weaver, which got him towards a rear naked choke position. And so Roosevelt Roberts, it was just a simple fight. It's just a simple fight, but there was an obvious disparity between somebody of the level of Brock Weaver versus somebody of the level of Roosevelt Roberts. And both these fighters, they're not even within the top 10 of the lightweight division. they're nowhere near the top 10 of the lightweight division. And so for Roosevelt Roberts, this is a good performance for him. Brock Weaver, I don't expect him to get anywhere near the top 10 anytime soon after that performance. I really don't. And because of how unimpressed I am of Brock Weaver and how of an easy fight it was for Roosevelt Roberts to win. Yes, although like Roosevelt Roberts, like he won in the second round, 2.5 minutes in, it never felt that Roosevelt Roberts was in a bad position or was in a position to lose his fight. It's a shame. Even though his back is on the cage and he's getting hit in the face multiple times, even though he's being clinched on, it never felt that he was going to lose this fight because he had this fight in complete control, and it was evident later on in the reports that showed that Roosevelt Roberts did not sustain any injuries at all in this fight and is not going through any suspensions. He is perfect, and he says he's willing to fight as soon as, end of this month because he really didn't feel anything in this fight. And so let's go towards the only women's bout here of the main card, which is a women's strawweight bout between Mackenzie Dern versus Hannah Cifers. This has to be the third best fight of the entire night, arguably the second best fight of the night, and it's because, well, it's history in the making. Mackenzie Dern is the first and only woman so far to defeat her opponent via leg lock submission in women's UFC history. So congratulations for Mackenzie Dern here. Now, in this fight though, it looked really scary. It really did. Let me talk about the betting dogs here first. So, the underdogs for all the fights. So, Gilbert Burns was the only underdog in this entire main card to win in this fight. Everybody else was expected to win. Mackenzie Dern was expected to win. Roosevelt Roberts was expected to win. Billy Quarantino was expected to win. And Augusto Sakai was expected to win. Gilbert Burns, no. He was the only fighter here who was the betting underdog to end up winning the fight. And what's very interesting about that was that Mackenzie Dern, out of all the fighters here in the main card here, she was the only betting favorite that looked like that she really should have lost the fight. And when I say that, it's because the first round, so this fight was actually really short. This fight only lasted about 2.5 minutes. And I'm going to tell you right now, in those 2.5 minutes, 2 minutes of that was Hannah Cifers winning the fight. If I can be honest with you. Because the bell rings, Hannah Cifers just blitz Mackenzie Dern. No fear. Not afraid to get rocked at all. Not afraid of being taken down. Just goes in and just punches the heck out of Mackenzie Dern. Clinches at her. Doing some clinch boxing, doing some dirty boxing, running in some uppercuts. It didn't look good for Mackenzie Dern at all. It looked like Hannah Cifers was dictating and controlling the fight for 2 out of the 2.5 minutes in this fight here. And I guess, here's the thing. Mackenzie Dern, I'm happy for Mackenzie Dern for being the first and only woman to win with a leg lock submission in the UFC. But I really felt like if Mackenzie Dern and Hannah Cifers were to fight each other 5 more times, I could see Hannah Cifers pulling out a couple wins here. I really can. Because the problem that Hannah Cifers had in this fight was the fact that she was committed in being aggressive and pressing forward the action. Because throughout this entire fight, Mackenzie Dern was always walking backwards. The problem with this is that Hannah Cifers, she was always not committed to the clinch at all. Or her form in the clinch just didn't look good. In the sense that she's using one hand for the clinch. And then you should use the other hand you have to go hold on to them, and you'll quickly go for an uppercut in the head, or go for a knee, or go for a leg trip, or go for or for a takedown. Every time Hannah Cifers went for a clinch onto Mackenzie Dern, it's just Hannah Cifers with one arm grabbing onto Dern, and then just lazily hitting her with her right arm. Not really lazily, but she's lazily gripping on to Mackenzie Dern as she's trying to strike her. And I thought that was a bad move. I thought if she was really committed to the clinch, she would hold on to Mackenzie Dern with both arms and then slowly work her way up into going for these hard punches. But instead, Hannah Cifers was a bit too reckless. And because she was way too reckless with her clinching, and that she wasn't really committed to the clinches, she wasn't really grappling on, she never really grappled Mackenzie Dern. More like she just nudged and brought over Mackenzie Dern closer to her for dirty boxing. And Mackenzie Dern was shocked by this aggressiveness. So she didn't really focus in her head or got in her head that she can actually grapple back on towards Hannah Cifers till 2 minutes later. And so multiple times Hannah Cyphers would attempt a clinch onto Dern. At like the third or fourth attempt of this fight after clinching, Mackenzie Dern recognized, okay, so Hannah Cyphers' form isn't all that good. I can actually clinch her, and I can use her own very aggressive, like her own like aggro fight style, her own momentum against her. And Mackenzie Dern was able to do a headlock onto Hannah Cyphers, flip her over for a slam, and through flipping her over a slam, she then worked her way slowly up, going for her way slowly up. She grabbed onto the legs of Hannah Cyphers, and from there she was able to work her way down to go for a leg lock, which gives Mackenzie Dern a submission round 1 victory 2 minutes and 30 seconds in. So congratulations, Mackenzie Dern. Really good fight there. Hannah Cyphers, I expect more from Cyphers going to the future. Even before when this fight happened, when it comes to betting underdogs, a lot of people picked Mackenzie Dern to defeat Hannah Cyphers here. And in my opinion, I thought this was going to be the closest fight in the entire card. I thought it was going to be a very, very close bout. And Hannah Cyphers was really close. She was really, really close to getting like the underdog victory onto Mackenzie Dern. But I feel like if she made a couple small adjustments to her striking, a couple adjustments in her clinching and grappling, then she could have defeated Mackenzie Dern, and she could have walked away as the victor here. But you know what? Good job for both of these women. Both fighters here in a future report are told that neither of them got any serious or major injury. Because for those who didn't know, after this event happened, a lot of these fighters, most of these fighters, ended up going through a medical suspension. And Mackenzie Dern and Hannah Cyphers didn't get a suspension, so they have the great opportunity, of possibly fighting in Fight Island. I can't wait for that. If that does happen, I'll be excited to see a rematch between both of these women. Even though it might not happen, though, it will be an exciting fight. This is a fun fight. And without doubt, it's either the third or the second best bout of the entire night for the main card. So you're listening to the GSMC MMA Podcast. Coming back right after a short break here as we look at the prelims.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
And we are back. And so, now I'm talking about the prelims here for UFC Fight Night, Woodley vs. Burns. I'm talking about the main card. Now let's talk about the prelim card here, which had the main event of Katlyn Chookagian versus Antonina Shevchenko. I thought this fight should have been in the main card, in my personal opinion. I thought this would have been, the main card could have been a lot more better if we had Chookagian versus Shevchenko replacing either the Sakai fight or the Roberts fight. But for the Katlyn Chookagian versus Antonina Shevchenko fight, I just didn't know what the point of this was. I really didn't. Because Katlyn Chookagian was the number 1 contender. She was a title contender against Valentina Shevchenko. She lost her opportunity. And now she's matched up against Antonina. And I guess the reason for this matchup here would be the narrative. Like, oh wow, older sister's here. She's gonna go fight against the fighter who competed against her younger sister. It's a very interesting storyline here. But I'm looking at this and I'm like, well, this is a one-sided beatdown. It really was. It was a one-sided fight that just showcased how good of a fighter Katlyn Chookagian is, and how disappointing Antonina Shevchenko has been since her UFC debut. I still remember this. Antonina Shevchenko came in with so much hype. She came in as like very dangerous knockout artist kickboxer, and now she's like kind of being slowed down here. Katlyn Chookagian is no slouch. There's a reason why she's a former challenger. She's a former title contender here. And in this fight here, Katlyn Chookagian came in with the right strategy. Katlyn Chookagian pretty much wrestled Antonina Shevchenko for 3 rounds, and out of the 15 minutes of fighting that actually happened, Katlyn Chookagian controlled the fight pretty much 14 out of the 15 minutes in this fight. Because Bell rings. Immediately, Chookagian takes down Antonina. Second round. Bell rings. Takedown. Third round. Bell rings. Shevchenko had no answer for Katlyn Chookagian's wrestling at all. And I got to respect Katlyn Chookagian here. I really do. Because Chookagian came to this fight with the right strategy. Alright? Because if you say it was Katlyn Chookagian versus Antonina Shevchenko in a purely kickboxing match, or in a purely striking exchange, it'd be 50-50. Antonina Shevchenko is the real deal. She's that good of a striker. So if it was just her and Chookagian, just striking only, could have gone 50-50. Either woman could have won the fight. But Katlyn Chookagian was like, okay, instead of taking the risk of getting knocked out by this very dangerous woman here, or me trying to be a glory hog and try to knock her out, I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to play it safe and fight the smart way. I'm going to go and take her down because the biggest weakness in Antonina is her wrestling ability. Her ground game is really lacking. Her last loss came from her, being grappled with. And so, I respect Chookagian and her cornerman's ability to be like, okay, seriously, Chookagian, I know you can box, but don't box her. Just grapple her, just wrestle her, make you dictate the pace of this fight, because Antonina Shevchenko, she had no answer. She had no answer for the grappling. She was like a fish out of water, being grappled for 14 out of the 15 minutes of this fight. It wasn't a fun fight for her, but it was a really good showcase as to prove us why Katlyn Chookagian should possibly fight against Valentina Shevchenko again. There could be a chance that it might happen. We might see Johan Calderwood versus Chookagian. I think that would be a really fun fight to go see. But right now, I don't get the matchup here. I really don't. Because Antonina Shevchenko, she's outside the top 10. She's outside the top 10 in the women's fight rankings. And Katlyn Chookagian is, I think she's in the top 3 or number 1. So, what was there to gain from Katlyn Chookagian defeating Shevchenko? Not really sure. It felt like this matchup was meant to push Antonina if she were to win. But since she didn't, I don't know what to expect from either fighter next. I don't. And when you look at, I'm gonna blitz write this through here because the prelims was a lot more exciting than the main card, for the most part, in terms of finishes. Because in the main card, we had 2 submission victories and 3 decision victories. Now, when we look at the prelim here, we have a 1 decision, 2 decision. Alright then, so we have 2 decision victories, 2 submissions, and 2 KOs. We had some knockouts. We had some knockout action happening here. We had Daniel Rodriguez winning via decision against Gabe Green. Jamal Hill winning via TKO against Kilson Abreu. We have Tim Elliott losing by submission through Brandon Royval. We have Luis Smolka losing by submission against Casey Kenny. And Chris Gutierrez winning via TKO/KO on Vince Morales. This is a very fun card that really made you excited. I can tell right now, the prelims definitely did their job, and I'm happy for it. I really am. They started off the show exciting. There were some kind of meh fights in the main card, but overall, it was a fun show from top to bottom. Now, in terms of fighter payouts here, there's a list here. It's the estimated listing that is coming in from MMAmania.com and by Forbes that detailed out the money that these fighters made from this event here. This is only the estimated guess, not the exact pay, but here it is. Gilbert Burns made $168,000 with $84,000 to show, $84,000 to win. Tyron Woodley, $200,000 base. Tyron Woodley made $200,000 base pay. He made over twice as much money off base pay than Gilbert Burns. Which is incredible to me, considering the fact that Woodley lost the fight, but it's very interesting. So Augusto Sakai came at home with $100,000. $50,000 to show, $50,000 to win. Blagoy Ivanov came in at $60,000 as his base pay. That to me is very interesting, considering the fact that a lot of people had Sakai win that fight as the obvious winner. And so, Ivanov gets paid an extra $10,000 off his base pay. Billy Quarantillo gets paid $24,000. $12,000 to show, $12,000 to win. Spike Carl gets $12,000. So the 2 fighters who, in my opinion, had the best fight of the night, the most exciting fight of the night, they're being paid $12,000 base pay. $12,000. You could work a minimum wage job and make more money than both of these fighters. Roosevelt Roberts made $46,000 with $24,000 to show, $22,000 to win in his win. Brock Weaver, $9,600. So, here's the thing. Brock Weaver was supposed to be paid $12,000 if he didn't miss weights. But Brock Weaver came home with about $10,000. And that's not including, taxes. So, he barely made any money from this. He barely did. There are delivery boys right now who work like Uber Eats and like Postmates that make more money than these fighters. Oh, man. And then we had Mackenzie Dern coming home with $66,000 with $33,000 to show, $33,000 to win. Hannah Cyphers came in with $25,000 as her win home pay. Good for her. And we got Katlyn Chookagian being the second most highest paid fighter here. In terms of base pay. Oh no, actually, Katlyn Chookagian was the third highest paid fighter here at $120,000. $60,000 to show, $60,000 to win. Anthony Shevchenko came in at only $35K. Oy. So I'm going to talk about this later on after the short break. I'm going to go talk about further on when it comes to economics of fighters. Every single episode, I'm talking about fighter economics and how much money these guys are being paid. And I got to explain all the time here. But yeah, these fighters, they don't get paid all that well. They really don't. The UFC is... I've always said this already, because currently right now, Jon Jones is currently going through a contractual dispute with the UFC as it pertains to money right now happening. Jon Jones isn't the first fighter to do this. There's been many fighters that have had contractual disputes with Dana White, and Dana White himself isn't really... He doesn't allow Dana White's hard to negotiate. It's very obvious that Dana White kind of has a hard head. He's pretty stubborn. He makes a good case as to why these fighters aren't being paid as high as they believe they should be paid. But right now, money economics right now and people making certain types of money in combat sports is very complicated. There's a reason why there are a lot of fighters who you don't even know make a whole lot more money in boxing than they do in mixed martial arts. Even though a fighter like Valentin Shevchenko or a Katlyn Chookagian, even though they're making good money and they're relatively popular compared to boxers, not really. In terms of economics, they ain't doing so well for themselves. That's why we hear people like Daniel Cormier, Stipe Miocic, TJ Dillashaw, Cody Garbrandt, why they always throw their name out there when they say that they're thinking about doing boxing, and it makes sense. Why would you want to fight and make $100K if you could fight elsewhere and make over double that? You're listening to the GSMC MMA Podcast, coming back right after the short break here.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello and welcome back. So, I just talked about UFC Fight Night, Woodley versus Burns, and the discussion ended with fight money, fight economics, and one fighter right now that's in a very complicated position would be current light heavyweight champion Jon Jones. Now, before I get into what's actually happening between Jon Jones, the UFC, and Dana White, recently, in Jon Jones' Instagram, to those of you who are unaware, currently in the States, America is in a very complicated point right now as it pertains towards race and classes right now. I'm not going to get into it because I don't want to get into politics. But Jon Jones, on his Instagram, it had him going towards two teenagers. They were wearing a black hoodie, or all black. They had a black cover mask to go cover their face. Jon Jones went up to both of those kids and he grabbed these spray tags, or these like spray cans, away from the both teenagers, and then you hear Jon Jones like flipping out, yelling at them. A car almost came in and run over Jon Jones. And then Jon Jones on his tweet was talking about like the looting that's happening right now in the States. Because for those of you who don't live in the States right now, There's a lot of looting. There's a lot of protests. There's a lot of rioting involved. There's a lot of rioting. Some of it pertains towards the coronavirus pandemic. Another part of it pertains towards the incident with George Floyd. And John Jones is talking. I agree with John Jones here in the fact that I don't think you should vandalize other people's properties and steal stuff and attack people to make a case towards something that's unrelated. That's how it is, because it's not just with John Jones, but across America. In my local area, me and my friends love to go to this one hobby shop, because in this hobby shop we can go get because we love art. We love art and we like building stuff. And so in this hobby shop we can go and like create. We can like buy objects. We can go like create some stuff with it. So there was another hobby shop, not my hobby shop, but there's another hobby shop just a couple miles away that just got raided. They got raided. They lost their stuff. A lot of people around them just came in the name of George Floyd, started stealing stuff. I've already seen like images and videos of random looters coming into stores, like taking giant TVs, attacking people, setting cars on fire, like breaking into people's cars. It's vandalism. It really is. And so John Jones talking about how, okay, I understand people are upset. I'm upset, but you're making the situation worse by destroying other people's stuff when that's not related. It's not just John Jones. There are other athletes that are currently going through this like weird period of time right now where people are being attacked, places are being looted, places are being vandalized, people's cars are being broken into. It's a really, really negative time right now in the States. And so, I agree with John Jones in that aspect as it pertains to don't cause violence. Don't cause unwarranted, unrelated violence, because it doesn't do any good. It really doesn't. And now that I've talked about John Jones in a positive light in a wee bit here, and that I agree with him in terms of that, one thing I don't agree with John Jones is that he is so not worth Deontay Wilder money. He's not. There should be no UFC fighter right now making anywhere near $10 million. John Jones, despite being the greatest of all time, Dana White has called him the greatest of all time. I think he's one of the greatest of all time. Many fight fans and analysts will call him the greatest of all time. He is the greatest. He is one of, if not the greatest of all time in UFC history, without a doubt about that. In the world of mixed martial arts, he's amazing. Mount Rushmore of mixed martial arts. He's that great. But here's the thing people have to recognize. Before the commercial break, I was talking about how these fighters weren't really making that much money. There are many jobs out there. So I got a friend right now who works at Facebook. She's only 23 years old, and she makes bank compared to these athletes. She makes much, much more money. I got a friend who works at Google making $300K a year. And he tells himself that he says that he's an underachiever. And he didn't even come from a good school. Like, although he's doing engineering, he didn't even come from a prestigious good school. He came from like a low-ranking college, and is now making $300K a year. He's making $300K a year, traveling around the world, sitting his butt on a chair, looking at a computer screen the entire time. He's not putting himself at any risk compared to these fighters, and he's making much more bank. And the reason why a kid who's 23 years old, 26, 27 years old, there's a reason why those people can make a lot of money compared to, like, Mackenzie Dern or Hannah Cyphers or Gilbert Burns here. The reason is because Google has a lot of money. Google, Facebook, they have money to spare. Microsoft, they can pay their engineers and their employees at San Diego. UFC? No. Dana White was asked about this in the post-fight press conference of Burns vs. Woodley. Media members asked him, hey, what's going on with John Jones and contract negotiations? Like, what's going on in terms of money? And Dana White, I'm gonna just summarize it here. Dana White says, John Jones may be the greatest, but he should be paid the money that the UFC can pay him. And when I heard Dana White say that, I agree with him. Your value doesn't matter. Whatever you think, the value you think you have to a company doesn't matter. That's what I want to say right now. Like, look at Demetrius Johnson. Demetrius Johnson on paper is like, okay, you know, one of the greatest champions of all time, the most dominant champion of all time in UFC history, you know, like 11 fight win streak as champion, one of the best ever. Alright then. I'm not even talking about it, like, whether or not he even brings in money. Matter of the fact is that although he is a great fighter, the UFC just can't pay him what he believes he should be paid for. And it's because UFC doesn't have the money. And I know what the first argument is going to be. Well, isn't this a $1 billion organization? Like, new ownership bought the UFC for $4.2 billion. So the UFC must now have money, right? No, that's not how it works. And the reason for that is because, guess what? Yeah, $4.2 billion was spent to the original owners of the UFC. They keep the money. Why do you think they were so forceful as it pertains to promoting Ronda Rousey versus Amanda Nunes? It's because they need to make up that money. That $4.2 billion doesn't go to the UFC. It goes to the Fertitta brothers, the original owners. Yes, UFC was bought for $4.2 billion, but that doesn't mean the UFC actually has $4.2 billion to use as it pertains to spending money on fighters. And I understand the issue here, in the fact that it's ridiculous that Dana White can go and say stuff like, money doesn't matter all that much to me, I do this for the passion. Okay, I understand that. Like, I don't do that much stuff for money, really. I'm well off, myself. But a lot of these fighters, and a lot of people that I know in my life, they can't say that. Not all of them can say that. Money matters a lot to a whole lot of people. It may not matter that much to Dana White, and it may not matter that much to me, because me and him are both kind of set with how things are doing for us in terms of economics, but not everyone else is set when it comes to economics here, when it comes to making money. And so, yes, I'll love to live in a world where fighters like Demetrius Johnson and John Jones can go make the same amount of money as Deontay Wilder. But the sad reality, the hard truth is, there is very little money to be made in the UFC. There's very little. There are a lot of great athletes. There are a lot of great athletes who want to fight in the UFC, but a lot of people, like here's like Greg Hardy. Greg Hardy can be making a lot more money doing anything else than doing mixed martial arts. Like, his salary in the NFL is freaking multiples compared to what he's doing in the UFC. He's just doing this as a passion project. And Tyron Woodley right now and John Jones, they're both coming to the realization that there's a heavy ceiling in the UFC that you can make in terms of money. The fact that Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor are your, like, richest fighters, and they make barely anything when compared to, like, NBA athletes or NFL athletes or MLB athletes. They make peanuts compared to them, and those two fighters are the highest standards as it pertains to making money, for being big money makers within the UFC as competitors. Just think about that. You're listening to the GSMC MMA Podcast, coming back right after the short break here with something a wee bit positive at the very least. See you soon.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
And we are back. So, things have been getting incredibly negative in the world of mixed martial arts, and also in the States as it pertains to politics and race. But there's something really positive that came in through the email. I just got a message here updating me on what's happening with Brian Caraway's GoFundMe page. To those of you who've been unaware, Brian Caraway's mother has passed away. And through his passing, this is where things get really dark. Through her passing, funeral costs have been inflated for some strange reason. As a result of the coronavirus pandemic, and a lot of people who are elderly passing away and dying, funeral costs have increased. Which is absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane that the cost to go and bury your own loved one has increased. It's like people are taking advantage of the coronavirus pandemic, and they're now trying to suck up money from people, and it's really unethical and wrong and bad. And since I've been talking about MMA fighters, just imagine, the UFC is the largest mixed martial arts organization in the world. And even then, the fighters don't get paid all that well. Even if you fight at the main card, which should be like every fighter's, like, their main start goal should be, I want to compete in the main card for a UFC show, because if I do that, there'll be more eyes on the product, which will make me look good, so maybe I can go, and if I have a really good performance, I can get popular, I can get some advertising going on, I can get more sponsors, I can go and push myself for being in a possible title fight in the near future. I can push myself for being in bigger fights. I can go make more money. Because guess what? These fighters don't make that much money. I just talked about Spike Carlisle and Billy Quarantillo. They had the best fights at the UFC Fight Night show. But they're walking away. One of them is walking away with only $12,000. And the other one's walking away with $24,000. And yes, like, the smart thing to do, I always say, is for everybody, not just mixed martial arts, but everybody should always have a side gig or an alternate way to go make money if the money you're making right now just isn't really working well for you. There are a lot of people who have side gigs, who do side jobs. I know somebody who used to work as a scientist or a chemist back in the late 80s, and now they're working as like a delivery person while simultaneously working as a professor at a college. So, by day, they're a professor at a college, they're a chemistry professor, and then by nighttime, they're working as a delivery person, because you gotta make alternate ways to go make money. Also, the fact that teachers don't usually make much money. So now that we know that Bryan Caraway, he participated in The Ultimate Fighter, he was in a show that involved Team Bisping in it, Team Bisping as a coach, and he participated in the UFC, he did decent, he did alright, and then he left. He's now with another mixed martial arts organization. But with his mother passing away, about a couple months ago, he set up a GoFundMe page. And in this GoFundMe page, he was asking for $12,000. And the reason for that is because, well, we now know, UFC fighters, mixed martial arts fighters, unless you're Conor McGregor, or you're a staple in a division, a top 5 ranked fighter, even a fighter like Jeremy Stephens, proper journeyman, he doesn't make that much money. He really doesn't. I think he made like $60K in his last fight, which is like the average salary for, and that's not including taxes, and him paying for like fight camp and nutritional food, and for like other inequities that you need for your housing and for like daily living. So, $60K. Not that much. He's making below the average salary of the average American. And if you live in California, way above the average salary for the average Californian. So Bryan Caraway, he doesn't have that much money in the first place. He has a family. His mother just passed away. What can he do? Well, he asked the MMA community to go and help him out. And last week when his GoFundMe page first started, there was very few money. I remember it at like $2,000. It came in at $2,000, and then someone gave a tip to MMAJunkie.com, to ESPN, to other news outlets as it pertains to mixed martial arts and sporting. And then from that point on, it multiplied. Like 3 days later, multiplied up to $8,000, $10,000, $11,000. And just as of today, in the span of a week, Bryan Caraway was able to go get $12,000 to go pay for his funeral costs, for his mother's funeral costs. And I'm happy about that. I'm really happy for getting an email here. So it is coming in from Abby Garbrand, who is organizing the fundraiser on behalf of Bryan Caraway. It was created on May 14. It took about like half a month. It took like 2.5, 3 weeks to get 12. Seriously, so last week it was only at $2,000. Last week. But this campaign started like 3 weeks ago. So it was a huge push that happened in the last week. I am really happy and thankful for the MMA community for being a part of this. But she goes to say, on May 12th, we lost one of the most beautiful, loving, selfless people. She was a mom and best friend to so many people and loved everyone as if they were her own. We are raising money to cover the cost so she can have a beautiful memorial and be remembered the way she deserves to be. If you can't donate, please share with everyone. We love you, Mama Caraway, RIP. And then, as of this being reported in from today, from the GoFundMe page, thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts for all the love and support offered. We were able to give Mom a beautiful ceremony and make a day really special. We love you all, Brian and the whole Caraway family. And looking at this is 4 hours ago, just 4 hours ago, it reached $12,000 with 361 donations. So we got 361 donors, 710 shares, and 361 followers. So to those of you who helped out, really great. I'm happy you did so. I'm really happy that during a time, I donated somebody else as well. So I'm really happy that we as an MMA community, which is fun here, a lot of fighters and a lot of people within this business of mixed martial arts, also even like in journalism, are always looking out for themselves and are looking out for number one. So I'm happy that we as an MMA community are able to go and come together and help out a fighter. Us knowing that fighters don't make that much money in the first place, and during a time of major uncertainty, as always, with the coronavirus pandemic happening, with the George Floyd incident, with contractual negotiations happening, with people losing their jobs, we can still come together and we can help each other out. And I'm very happy and I'm very grateful to be part of this community. I know Dana White and a lot of fighters out there are kind of like iffy as it pertains to fan criticism, journalists, media members. But the truth is, we're all on the same side here. We're all on the same side, and we want to support each other. We're also kind of just doing our jobs here, to be honest with you. Some of us are doing our jobs, some of us don't like it, some of us are... There are some annoyances as it pertains to the world of mixed martial arts, like the drama. Like, welterweight drama is always happening, Conor McGregor drama is happening, Khabib Nurmagomedov's family is going through problems right now as it pertains to coronavirus. There's a lot of problems that goes on in mixed martial arts. And it's nice to go, take a step back, and they're all on the same team here. We really are. We all want mixed martial arts to go back on track. We want mixed martial arts to be back the way it is, be normal, have a consistent schedule. That's what we want. And if a fighter is going through problems, everyone should be doing their best to help out. I don't know if Dana White knows about this situation, but I think Dana White, even though he kind of comes across as a stubborn guy who's very hot-headed and very blunt, really, unnecessarily, I've read up interviews several times by fighters like Francis Ngannou, and there's one fight, remember, Dana White, during, coronavirus, about 2 weeks ago, did a video message call with one, he still has that phone number for one of his fighters who fought in, the mid/undercard for the UFC, and he's working as a nurse, He's working as a nurse now, and Dana White called him and said, "Hey, I'm happy for you, man. You are kicking butt out there. You are playing your part, making the community and society better, man. Thank you for your time here at the UFC, and thank you for going out there as a nurse and helping out other people." So, Dana White does have a heart. He does. It's a very complicated, strange heart at times, but he still has a heart, though. Once again, thank you to all the people who helped out in the Brian Caraway. So, huge shout out and thank you to all those who helped out with the Brian Caraway GoFundMe funeral cost page. And I gotta tell you right now, I hope you guys have a great day also. So thank you for tuning into the GSMC MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you could please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.